Okay, so what we're looking at tonight is one of my favorite books, The Awakening of Intelligence by J. Krishnamurti. A wonderful, fabulous book. And I'm looking at page, thanks. I'm looking at page 96.
What chapter is that, please?
It's called Religious Experience and Meditation. And this is what Krishnamurti is saying on page 96. What is important is not controlling thought, but understanding it. Understanding the origin, the beginning of thought, which is in yourself. That is, the brain stores up memories. You can observe this yourself. You don't have to read books about it. If it had not stored up memories, it would not be able to think at all. That memory is the result of experience, of knowledge, yours, or of the community, of the family, of the race, and so on. Thought springs from that storehouse of memory. So thought is never free. It is always old. There is no such thing as freedom of thought. Thought can never be free in itself. It can talk about freedom, but in itself, it is the result of past memories, experiences, and knowledge. Therefore, it is old. Yet, one must have this accumulation of knowledge, otherwise one could not function. One could not speak to another, could not go home, and so on. Knowledge is essential. In meditation, one has to find out whether there is an end to knowledge, and so to freedom from the known. If meditation is a continuation of knowledge, is the continuation of everything that man has accumulated, then there is no freedom. There is freedom only when there is an understanding of the function of knowledge and therefore freedom from the known. We are inquiring into the field of knowledge, where it has its function and where it becomes an impediment to further inquiry. While the brain cells continue to operate, they can only operate in the field of knowledge. That is the only thing the brain can do, to function in the field of experience, of knowledge, in the field of time, which is the past. Meditation is to find out if there is a field which is not already contaminated by the known. If I meditate and continue with what I have already learned, with what I already know, then I am living in the past, within the field of my conditioning. In that, there is no freedom. I may decorate the prison in which I live. I may do all kinds of things in that prison, but there is still a limitation, a barrier. So the mind has to find out whether the brain cells, which have developed through millennia, can be totally quiet and respond to a dimension they do not know. Which means, can the mind be totally still. This has been the problem of all religious people throughout the centuries. They realize that you must have a very quiet mind, because then only can you see. If you are chattering, if your mind is constantly in movement, rushing all over the place, obviously, it cannot look, it cannot listen totally. So they say, control it, hold it, put it in a prison. They have not found a way of bringing about a mind that is completely and utterly quiet. They say, don't yield to any desire. Don't look at a woman. Don't look at the beautiful hills, the trees, and the beauty of the earth, because if you do, it might remind you of a woman or a man. Therefore, control, hold on, and concentrate. When you do all that, you are in conflict. And therefore, there has to be more control and more subjugation. This has been going on for millennia because they realize they must have a quiet mind. Now, how does the mind become quiet? Without effort, without control, without giving it a frontier. The moment you ask how, you are introducing a system. Therefore, there is no how. Can the mind become quiet? I don't know what you are going to do about it when you see the problem, when you see the necessity, the truth of having this delicate, subtle mind, which is absolutely quiet. How is it to happen? This is the problem of meditation, because only such a mind is a religious mind. It is only such a mind that sees the whole of life as a unit, as a unitary movement, not fragmented. Therefore, such a mind acts totally, not fragmentarily, because it acts out of complete stillness. The foundation for such a mind, a quiet mind, the foundation is a life of complete relationship, a life that is orderly and therefore virtuous, a life that is extraordinarily simple inwardly and therefore totally austere. The austerity of deep simplicity, which means that the mind is not in conflict. When you have laid that foundation easily, without any effort, because the moment you introduce effort, there is conflict. You see the truth of it. Therefore, it is the perception of what is that brings about a radical change. It is only the still mind that understands that in a quiet mind, there is a movement that is totally different, that is of a different dimension, of a different quality, that can never be put into words because it is indescribable. What can be described is what comes up to this point, the point when you have laid the foundation and seen the necessity, the truth, and the beauty of a still mind. For most of us, beauty is in something, in a building, in a cloud, in the shape of a tree, in a beautiful face. Is beauty out there, or is it a quality of mind that has no self-centered activity? Because like joy, the understanding of beauty is essential in meditation. Beauty is really the total abandonment of the me. And the eyes that have abandoned the me can see the trees, the beauty of it all, and the loveliness of the cloud. That happens when there is no center as the me. It happens to each one of us, doesn't it? When you see a lovely mountain, when you come upon it suddenly, there it is. Everything has been pushed aside except the majesty of that hill. That mountain, that tree absorbs you completely. It is like a child with a toy. The toy absorbs the child. And when the toy is destroyed, the child is back again in whatever he's doing, in his mischief, in his crying. Likewise with us. When you see the mountain or the single tree on a hilltop, it absorbs you. And we want to be absorbed by something, by an idea, by an activity, by a commitment, by a belief. Or we want to be absorbed by another, which is like the child with a toy. So beauty means sensitivity, a body that is sensitive, which means the right diet, the right way of living. And you have all of this if you have gone that far. I hope you will. Or are you doing it now? Then the mind will inevitably and naturally, unknowingly, become quiet. You can't make the mind quiet because you are the mischief maker. You are yourself disturbed, anxious, confused. How can you make the mind quiet? But when you understand what quietness is, when you understand what confusion is, what sorrow is, and whether sorrow can ever end, and when you understand pleasure, then out of that comes an extraordinarily quiet mind. You don't have to seek it. You must begin at the beginning, and the first step is the last step. And this is meditation. Now, there are just a few questions, and I will read the questions from the questioners here. Questioner, when you make the analogy of the mountain, the hills, the beautiful sky, that's wrong for these people. That's not the analogy for them. The analogy is the dirt. Krishnamurti, right. Take that. The analogy of the dirty streets of New York, the analogy of squalor, poverty, the ghettos, the wars to which each one of us has contributed. You don't feel that way because you have separated yourself, isolated yourself. Therefore, having no relationship with another, you become corrupt and allow corruption to spread in the world. That's why this corruption, this pollution, these wars, this hatred cannot be stopped by a political or a religious system or by any organization. You have to change. Don't you see this? You have to cease completely to be what you are, not through will, meditation is the emptying of the mind of will, then a totally different action takes place. Questioner: if one can have the privilege of becoming totally aware, how can we then help those who are conditioned, who have a deep resentment in them? Krishnamurti: why, if I may ask, do you use the word privilege? What is there sacred or privileged about being aware? That's a natural thing, isn't it, to be aware? If you are aware of your own conditioning, of the turmoil, the dirt, the squalor, the war, the hatred, if you are aware of all that, you will establish a relationship with another so complete that you are related to every other human being in the world. You understand this? If I am related to somebody completely, totally, not as an idea or an image, then I am related to every human being in the world. Then I will see, I will not hurt another. They are hurting themselves. Then go, preach, talk about it, not with the desire to help another. You understand? That's the most terrible thing to say. I want to help another. Who are you to help another, including the speaker? Sir, look, the beauty of the tree or the flower doesn't want to help you. It is there. It is for you to look at the squalor or at the beauty. And if you are incapable of looking at it, then find out why you have become so indifferent, so callous, so shallow and empty. If you find out that, then you are in a state where the waters of life flow. You don't have to do anything. Questioner: what is the relationship between seeing things exactly as they are and consciousness? You only know consciousness by its content, and its content is what is happening in the world of which you are a part. To empty all that is not to have no consciousness, but a totally different dimension. You cannot speculate about that dimension. Leave that to the scientists, to the philosophers. What we can do is to find out whether it is possible to uncondition the mind by becoming aware, by becoming totally attentive. Questioner: I don't know myself what love is, or what truth is, or what God is, but you describe it as love is God instead of love is love. Can you explain why you say love is God? Krishnamurti: I didn't say love is God. Well, I read one of your books. I'm sorry, don't read books. That word has been used so much, is so loaded by man's despairs and hopes. You have your God, the communists have their God. So find out, if I may suggest, what love is. You can only find out what love is by knowing what it is not. Not knowing intellectually, but actually in life, putting aside what it is not, jealousy, ambition, and greed, all the division that goes on in life, the me and the you, we and they, the black and the white. Unfortunately, you won't do it because it needs energy, and energy comes only when you observe actually what is and don't run away from it. When you see actually what is, then in the observing of it, you have the energy to go beyond it. You cannot go beyond it if you are trying to escape from it, to translate it, or to overcome it. Just observe actually what is. Then you have abundance of energy. Then you can find out what love is. Love is not pleasure. And to really find that out inwardly for yourself, do you know what that means? It means there is no fear. There is no attachment, no dependency, but a relationship in which there is no division. Questioning. Could you talk about the role of the artist in society? Does he serve a function beyond his own? Krishnamurti, who is an artist? Someone who paints a picture, writes a poem, who wants to express himself through painting or through writing a book or a play. Why do we divide the artist from the rest of us, or the intellectual from the rest of us? We have placed the intellectual on one level, the artist perhaps at a higher level, and the scientist at still higher level. And then we say, what is their role in society? The question is not what is their role, but what is your role in society? Because you have created this mess. What is your role? Find out, sir. That is, find out why you live within this world of squalor, hatred, and misery, and apparently it does not touch you. Look, you've listened to these talks, shared some of the things together, understood, let's hope, a great deal. Then you become a center of right relationship. And therefore, it is your responsibility to change this terrible, corrupt, destructive society. One more question, and that's it. Sir, would you go into psychological time? This is important. Krishnamurti. Time, there is chronological time by the watch that must exist. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to catch your bus, cook a meal, and all the rest of it. But there's another kind of time which we have accepted, and that is tomorrow I will be. Tomorrow I will change. Tomorrow I will become. Psychologically, we have created time tomorrow. Is there a tomorrow psychologically? That question fills us with dread to ask seriously because we want tomorrow. I shall have the pleasure of meeting you tomorrow. I'm going to understand tomorrow. My life will be different tomorrow. I will realize enlightenment tomorrow. Therefore, tomorrow becomes the most important thing in our life. You have had sex yesterday, all the pleasures, all the agonies, whatever it is, and you want it tomorrow because you want that same pleasure repeated. Put that question to yourself and find out the truth of it. Is there a tomorrow at all, except in thought, which projects tomorrow? So tomorrow is the invention of thought as time. And if there is no tomorrow psychologically, what happens in life today? Then there is a tremendous revolution, isn't there? Then your whole action undergoes a radical change, doesn't it? Then you are completely whole now, not projecting from the past through the present into the future. That means to live, dying every day. Do it, and you will find out what it means to live completely today. Isn't that what love is? You don't say, I will love tomorrow, do you? You love or you don't love. Love has no time. Only sorrow has time. Sorrow being thought as in pleasure. So one has to find out for oneself what time is and find out if there is a no tomorrow. That is to live. Then there is life, which is eternal, because eternity has no time. So he covered a lot of things in this talk.
Yeah, if you go back to what you started, Evie, there was that thought is never free. It is always old.
Yeah.
At the beginning of
Do
your
you want
reading
me
tonight.
All right. Do you want me to read it again?
If you want, maybe just look at that one part there, or start with that one part.
Okay. So clearly what he's saying here is thought as
what is he saying? I'm looking for where it is in the book. I just trying to find it.
Then I shall read it. The brain stores up memory. If it had not stored up memories, it would not be able to think at all. That memory is the result of experience, of knowledge, yours or of the community or the family, of the race, and so on. Thought springs from that storehouse of memory. So thought is never free. It is always old. There is no such thing as freedom of thought. Thought can never be free in itself. It can talk about freedom, but in itself, it is the result of past memories, experiences, and knowledge, and therefore it is old.
Right. So that's that part, right?
Okay, but he goes on to say that what one is to do in meditation, one has to find out whether there is an end to knowledge, meaning the psychological accumulation of all our thought experiences. And so there is freedom from the known. And to find out, is there a field which is not already contaminated by the known?
Right. So this thought is never free, is always old. And this is the thing, and Ugo's sort of has talked about this, how basically it's always memory. Thought is always from memory. But my question then is, if that's the case, then how is there ever something new brought into the world? If thought is always old, how does something new enter into your realm or into Krishnamurti's realm?
So what he's saying here is something new can only enter when the mind is absolutely quiet, when it's empty.
I understand that.
There's a stillness.
Right. I understand that, but doesn't it need to enter in the realm of thought? Isn't there such a thing as new thought? There's a new thought.
Yes. It enters, it has to enter into the realm of thought if you're going to communicate it, right?
Just even to create it, to think about it. There is such a thing as newness in thought. We didn't have a rocket engine back in the 1800s.
Right.
We didn't have the atomic bomb. We didn't have electricity harnessed in the way that we have this. In our experience of reality, there is such a thing as new thought. Would you disagree with that?
Chip, but couldn't you say that the thoughts that led to the atomic bomb or the thoughts that led to the combustible engine, whatever example one might give, that quote unquote new thought was a result of incremental subsequent thoughts that built on the prior thought. The idea for a combustion in a, what do they call it?
Yeah,
Yeah, combustion engine.
yeah,
Yeah, didn't spring from nowhere. It sprang from the experience of, I guess, inventors who were studying prior foundations of science and engineering.
Absolutely.
Combustion,
Yep, I agree.
right?
Mhm.
but maybe it's, you know, it's so interesting because maybe it's more an insight to something, a sight into. It's like when all of a sudden, when you do, when there's a realization of something totally new, it takes the form almost of an intuitive insight, and then it's expressed obviously in thought, because otherwise we can't communicate. But that may be different than what you're talking about, which, yes, most of knowledge is built on past knowledge, but something that is totally new, and that can only come when the mind is absolutely quiet. There's, I guess, what people call the aha moment, an insight into something. And that, I think, is what he talks about, a different dimension. You know, he said there's a different dimension that thought doesn't touch. And yet we are able, through awareness, through insight, to touch that. And then we use thought to express it. I'm pretty sure that's what he's saying.
Yeah, I think this is one of the big things with Krishnamurti that I just feel, and I know this is a Krishnamurti group, so I realize I'm walking on eggshells here.
Don't worry about
Sorry, Ugo, not necessarily to remind you of breakfast, but
Don't tread on my eggshells.
but I think there's, and I don't mean any disrespect to him, but I think there's a lack of comprehensiveness in the system that he's put forth with
Well,
this.
I think there's something here that thought, we're lumping it all together, but to me, there's an aspect of psychological thought that's created from emotions, thought that's created from all the stuff that we process with the eye. I think what he's talking about in a still mind and creating new thought, it's a situation where, and I'm sure, Chip, that you've been in it, and probably the rest of us have been in it, something to do with our work or something that we're really interested in. You get involved in it. There is no self doing it. You're looking at the project and you just thought in it, and then something happens, and all of a sudden you say, shit, you know, and there's no me saying that. It's the thing that's in front of you that's dictating the result that you're interpreting. It's not coming through the eye. You're not seeing the problem through the eye. I think that's what he's getting at. Because in a sense, there's a word that he didn't use, that Krishnamurti didn't use in this presentation, and that is that all thought is conditioned. It's conditioned by the circumstances that you live in. So that the problem with the thinking and the problem with the thought is that thought creates thinking, but the thinking is from conditioned thought. So it's conditioned thinking. You know, if I live in South Africa, let's say, during the 19th, 20th, early 20th century, and I'm white, I have an affliction, I have an attitude, or I have a disposition toward the black. I didn't know that. I was brought up from the cradle. I was brought up from that. The same way that here in this country, we had this the situation. I'm just using that as an example of, the South and the plantation system and the system of slavery that we had. You were brought up that way.
Yes, well, that's the conditioning you talk about.
So
But
that's
now-
the thing that prevents new thought from happening. Something new can't possibly come out from that.
Okay. Could we say that when he says thought is old, he's talking about thought as time? And when he's talking about a whole new dimension, he's talking about timelessness. And in that dimension, there is not the old brain of thought conditioned, but something totally new that's timeless, is not in time. However, to be able to communicate it, we are back in time, in language, in order to communicate it. And that's thought in time. So maybe we could phrase it as timeless and in time. In time thought is old. That's what he's obviously, I mean, we could see that for ourselves.
Yeah, it has to be an experience that the senses experience, and that the mechanism that we have, the way we are, we experience something and it's recorded in memory.
Yes.
Here. So
Yes.
it has to be something that happened in the past.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess you can argue a really fine point. You're recording in time, in real time. Right now, stuff is being recorded, but it
Right.
isn't processed. It's just being recorded. What Krishnamurti is saying is that the content of your consciousness it's a repository of all the experiences that you've had, and
Yeah.
of course those experiences are in the past.
Okay.
So if a thought arises with its root coming from a source that is the past, it can't possibly come up with something new. It can come up with a variation of the old.
Yes.
And
Okay.
in very, very extreme, unbelievable cases. But I think what Krishnamurti is saying, that newness only comes when there is no sense of I. There is only the presence of the real self, if you will. There's
Okay.
no I processing the thought.
Right. But Chip, what is it that you find incomprehensible or a lack of comprehensiveness?
It's not incomprehensible. It's his thinking isn't comprehensive. And when you're saying, like Ugo, you said, this is what he's getting at, or we're talking, we've kind of got to this thing of, and I think, Ugo, your explanation of egoic thinking versus, not egoic thinking is what we've kind of arrived at in this group, in our conversation.
Right.
But I think his system is lacking, because he says stuff like thought is never free. He doesn't qualify it. He doesn't say psychological thought. He doesn't all of the nuance and the sort of the refinement that we've sort of developed in this group. He's not talking about it. And I think that's a problem, because you try to use his thinking as a scaffolding to develop your own thoughts, but his thinking it's erroneous. It's wrong. Thought is never free. It is free, obviously, because there is something new that comes into the world. And Evelyn, I think your explanation was really great. I think you said, there's this timeless inspiration almost. You didn't necessarily use that word, but it was this that basically, and then that's basically it becomes communicated. In order for it to be communicated, then it comes into thought.
Right.
But it's also, in order for it to become manifest within this realm, like the combustion engine, or whatever we want to talk about. Even like, let's say, look at the invention of the wheel, right? That might not necessarily have been the standing on the shoulder of giants kind of thing. It might have been somebody at some point realized, this wheel mechanism, right? So I think it is standing on the shoulder of giants. I think we need to recognize that our thinking as a species is evolutionary. Krishnamurti was writing in whatever period he was writing in, and he put forward this stuff. That's great, but maybe it needs refinements. In the same way as scientists, Isaac Newton was brilliant, but his thinking with refinements got us to eventually to Einstein. We eventually got into, so I think with all other phases and aspects of our society, we recognize evolution and progress of thought, right? We recognize it in science, most certainly. I think we can also recognize that is also happening within the realm of whatever word you want to call this, spirituality or anything else. And I just think his statements need to be refined, and we need to stand on his shoulders and move forward with this and recognize that it's not really accurate.
Well, Chip, I think the thing is that I really look, all of the scientific, all of the mechanical scientific stuff, that's functional. It doesn't involve the psyche. It doesn't involve the personality. It doesn't involve the suffering. How much progress has mankind made in the psychological aspect of life? He's been killing himself, and he's been just destroying himself since we have recorded time. From the days of the Sumerians, we have infinite dialogue about how he just went about killing himself. Look at what we have today. How much better are we off today than we were 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10,000 years ago? Okay, a little bit maybe. Maybe we don't impel people on spikes anymore, and maybe we don't burn people quite as often as everything else. But look at the suffering that goes on here. Look at this immigration. Look at the state of our state in this country right here.
Okay.
It's not a hell of a lot better than it has been. And I think that's what Krishnamurti is saying. That unless we change the way we think and we acknowledge that we have a problem with this whole thinking process, and to try to get an understanding of it, there's all the other ways have been tried and they don't work.
Okay.
Would you say that in the spiritual dimension in the spiritual dimension of being,
right,
there can't be evolution because it's now or it's not. And it's now what he's pointing to, what Krishnamurti is pointing to. It's now, but only when the mind is still, when the mind is quiet. Then that which is in a different dimension comes into being. That's from a spiritual perspective. So from that place, there's no such thing as progress. There's only, as he's pointed to, looking at the what is in our life and how are we living our life? And is it a life of simplicity, inner simplicity, which he points to means a mind that is not conflicted, not a contradiction? How are we living our life? How much awareness do we really have of another's pain? I mean, yes, there's empathy. We see fires, we see killings, we see death, we see tragedy, and it touches us. But not enough to say, I've got to change. It has to be in me. Because, as he points out, I am the world and the world is me. So I think maybe Chip, some of his things need to be reworked, but I think the pointers that he's pointing us to is having us again and again look inside and see what needs to be changed so that indeed we can start living a life, building a foundation in which possibly, just possibly, the mind can be still. And thought that comes up is not the thought that's the cause of suffering of ourselves or of anyone else. So that what comes up is truly a dimension of love that we're all a part of.
Hold on a second. So Chip, would you feel differently about some of what Krishnamurti says if he makes a distinction between thought in the realm of human relations and thought in the realm of science and technology? If he said there are certainly new, innovative, breakthrough thoughts in technology. After all, we had a man walk on the moon. But in the realm of our human relationships, there does not seem to be much new, because as Ugo said, we're still caught in a kind of survival mentality, and it's self-interest versus self-interest, and suffering for one's benefit still goes on. So what about that, Chip? Would that make it more palatable?
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry, I lost the connection for a little bit there, and I came back. But Evelyn, I heard most of what you said, which sounds good. And Paul, yes, it's actually not. I think, I was just using the science example as an example. I think with our own human evolutionary development, it's complicated because there's a social level aspect to it, and then there's the individual level aspect to it. And actually there's multiple layers of social levels, right? So it's very complicated. So you have societies at large, like you have a period of, they call the golden age that you go through, the Bronze Age, the Renaissance. There's certain periods where the society at large is progressing, and thought is progressing, and people's awareness is progressing. But yes, I agree with also Evelyn and also Ugo with what you said. Individually, our evolution out of the egoic self into the limitless self has to happen on a case-by-case basis, right? In other words, each of us have to do that, have to make that journey for ourselves. Right. So there's both the evolution of the individual, but then obviously there are social evolutions. Like I said, golden age, bronze age. We can agree on that, right? There are trends within societies. But the point I'm making is this: is that like I said, this thing, he said it. He said, thought is never free. It is always old. These are his words.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to say to you is that's not my experience. And I actually don't think it's your experience. And I'm giving you examples of things. Basically, it's as simple as the fact that if it's always old, that there's never an entrance of anything new, which we know is not the case. And what you're doing is you're saying, well, yes, this is coming from another realm. It's coming from a timeless. Yes, that's true. But so he should refine what he's saying here to clarify that, because what he's saying is not actually our experience.
But Chip, even the golden age, all the different ages of the Renaissance, the Middle Age, but all that is coming from the me. We have not yet built a society that's me free, that's free of me thinking. Everything is from me thinking.
Well, not everything. Not everything. There are people within our society that are not, that
Yes,
are operating
okay.
outside the
Yes.
me.
Okay.
And the
yes,
thing about the people that operate outside the me
yes.
is they're not dictatorial. They're
No.
not basically controlling. They're not forcing others to their
No,
path.
absolutely
So,
not.
so
That's
like
right.
what I said, it's happening both on a macro level and a micro level. The micro being the individual and the macro being the larger
Yes,
groupings.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I agree. Sorry, Evie, I interrupted you.
No, no, no.
Chip, so what would be an example in your mind of a new thought? Right now, as we speak, I'm waiting to have a new thought.
Ain't gonna happen.
No, because,
Ain't gonna happen.
and I'll give you an example. I'm in the
I'm
middle,
waiting.
wait, I'm waiting. Okay, you can,
He's waiting.
okay, but besides,
The beat is
Good,
Who's
good,
waiting?
wait,
good. I'll give you an example of a new thought. Okay,
yeah,
thought is actually free. We have the capability and the ability to be free thinking, and in fact, we have that expression. And outside the realm of the me, thought is able to be free. It is able to directly enter the world through the mind and be completely new, completely spontaneous.
Yes.
So
Chip,
that's a new thought based
But
upon
you-
Krishnamurti's.
yes, but you just said it, outside the realm of the
right,
me.
right.
Yes, exactly.
Outside the realm of the me.
Yes,
outside
exactly,
time.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And I think
Yes.
if Krishnamurti would have been a little bit more comprehensive and a little bit more detailed in his writing, he would have written this.
You gotta read
And
more
he might have.
Krishnamurti. He
Well,
said
well,
it in other books.
He might
Well,
have.
you're
I got
saying
100
he's saying it in other books, Ugo. But what I'm saying is this is what he's saying here.
Yes.
So I'm
Right.
saying
this is
it's
what he's
really
saying.
explicit, and it's the kind of thing like where there's no doubt about what he's saying. Thought is never free; it is always old.
And it is.
In the realm of the me.
Thanks, Evelyn. Ugo, also the thing, Ugo, about societies and how we haven't progressed particularly far. It's again on a social level, that's absolutely true. In other words, our societies, there's still all this barbaric stuff happening.
Mm.
But what happens is, on the individual level, is there are people that are becoming cognizant of their limitless self. We might walk past them and have a conversation with them and not even know who they are. But those people aren't necessarily apparent to us, in our regular day-to-day conversations or interactions. So what happens is this evolution of the self into the small self into the limitless self is happening for each individual. It's happening for the world at large, but each individual, there are people that are freeing themselves of the bounds of the me. That's my experience.
Okay,
I'll agree with you with that. Is
Yeah.
that there are
Okay.
exceptions.
So-
There are exceptions, but I think what I'm trying to say is that the percentage of people that are exceptions, I don't think has changed over the thousands and thousands and thousands of years. There were fewer when the population was smaller. Now we've got almost 8 billion people on Earth. So maybe there's a few hundred, maybe there's a few thousand, or I don't know, but a small minority, a small portion of it, or a large number, if you want to say 1,000 or 2,000 is a large number. But as a percentage of the population, I don't think it's moving very much.
Okay, hold on a second. I want to go for some consensus here. So outside the realm of the me, newness is possible. Outside the realm of the me, outside of me thinking,
Mhm.
truly new insights can manifest. And when I make an effort to communicate that insight, I do so via the medium of thought,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Perfect. I
That's-
love it. 100% agreement.
Right. That's what
Mhm.
this was all about tonight.
Yeah. And Ugo, in terms of the percentages, the Bhagavad Gita has this, and I'm not a scholar, so I'm not going to communicate this perfectly, but it's something about, out of a million people,
Mm.
you guys
Yeah.
remember this, out of a million people, one will seek me.
Right.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
no, out of 1,000, out of
Yeah.
1,000 people, one person will seek me. Out of 1,000 people that are seeking me, one person will find me.
Right.
So it's basically, we have this expression, 1 in a million. You've heard that expression.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes.
And that's basically the ratio that the Bhagavad Gita is putting out. Now, I don't know, those guys, there seem to be some insightful dudes writing this stuff. So maybe that might be the kind of ratio that we're talking about.
Mhm.
I have no idea.
Right, right.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
But I think I would suggest that enlightenment is not a permanent phenomenon for anyone, that it comes and goes, that we all have experiences, enlightening or awakening experiences. But to say that someone is permanently enlightened, that just doesn't happen.
No, because the person cannot be the me cannot never be enlightened. There can be glimpses breaking through the me,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
But as long as there's a me, then
Yeah.
it can't be.
Yeah,
I
I
don't-
would also say that, those still moments, without those still moments, we cannot have those aha moments,
That's
Mhm.
right.
moments of
That's right.
clarity or whatever, of inspiration.
Correct. Correct.
I think the other part of the problem is a really, I feel, speaking of myself primarily, really difficult time really comprehending and really understanding the role that the me plays. How the me is constantly there, and how I'm unwilling to do the work that would possibly be required to really try to put a hammer on the me. I mean, you would really have to, decide you really want to do. I'm too old to do it. I like my ice cream. The hell with it, But I can understand and I can really appreciate how strong this is, because as much as I want to not get angry, the guy that cut me off, I get angry.
Mhm.
And I accept it. I realize, hey, all right, I got angry. Now I see what's the whole process, and I forget
Okay.
about it.
I have a suggestion. At our next meeting, why don't we have as the topic of a discussion, how do we go about in a practical, everyday way to bring, like you said, a hammer to this ego, to not constantly be so wedded to it and identified with it, so that it feels like we're easily triggered, easily reactive, and don't have a control over our emotional life.
I've
Okay.
asked the same question to Evie a dozen times in this
Yes.
forum, and I get the
Yes.
same response every time.
Yes,
The seeing is the doing.
absolutely. The seeing is the doing.
Yes.
The seeing. But
Also-
do we see it? And as he said tonight, do we have the energy? Because it takes energy to see it. Because when the mind is chattering and chattering, it's using up our energy. So we need a quiet mind
I just,
and to see, to directly see.
yeah,
And that's how you pull
Mhm.
the plug on this me.
I just want to say, I had an interesting example talking to a woman that I'm working with who was an absolute rageaholic, had almost no control over her emotions. And for the last month, she's been on 5 milligrams of Lexapro every day. And it was interesting. She said, now I have the buffer that you talked about so often with me. I have a buffer between when the feeling comes up and the expression of it. So I'm much less reactive now. I'm calmer. I don't explode. And so here's a case where a pharmaceutically induced awareness is having the result of lessening the grip her me has on her.
Yes, but that's why meditation is
And meditation is designed to do the same.
I got a flyer from Krishnamurti, and it has can I read a sentence from it?
Sure.
It has to do with what is meditation. And he says, meditation is not forcing the mind to be quiet, nor concentration, nor contemplation. It is a profound awareness of the nature of self and thinking, with the possibility of thought finding its rightful place, a revolutionary freedom from the known.
Well, sure, that's a perfect way to say it. We would all be better off if thought finds its perfect place, its right place.
Right.
But right now, thought runs amok.
psychological.
Psychological.
Logical. Well, that's the whole thing. I think that's the nut of Krishnamurti. I don't think he's talking about Einstein or all the mechanical achievements that man has made. Man is infinite. Look, he's in the process of creating a mechanical self, AI.
Right.
I mean, this is just you realize this is just the beginning. It's a seed that's been planted out in the desert, for Christ's sake. I mean, in 200-300 years, just think of what the world was like just 200 years ago, and what this mechanical mind has been able to do. You know, I mean, just in my lifetime, So
be careful, Ugo. Chip is going to say that it's all the product of new thinking.
Yes, it is new. But you know, when you're really intent and you're concentrating on something and you really got your mind on it, you know, your concentration on something, there is no self. I think that's true. That's an awareness that you have to be of. I've felt that. I've had these experiences. And I think that's what is not clearly defined. I agree with you, Chip. It's not, you know, it's not put in the finest way that you could possibly put it in this particular presentation. But I think that, and I've got to give Krishnamurti a one-up. There is no writer that I have read that is as clear, as concise, and less bullshit and direct bread and butter as this guy. I mean, I am not a scholar. I'm not a literate person, and I can understand him clearer than anybody else that I've read.
Ugo, I love that. I love that thing that you read. I think that's right on target.
Right,
Yes.
right.
And also, I just want to say a couple things real quick. I think, Ugo, when you're saying how difficult it is, and, you know, the guy cut you off when you were driving, and, you know, how tough it is to feel. It's very interesting because you're saying, I did this, and when this, and so your identification in those moments clearly is with the egoic self, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right. And he said you can't make the mind quiet because you are the mischief maker. You are yourself disturbed, anxious, confused. How can you make the mind quiet? He's saying he's talking about you, the ego.
Yes.
He's talking about you, but the whole point of everything that we've been learning about this is that you are not the ego.
At another level, at this
No, not at another level. In reality, the fundamental reality is you are not the ego.
That doesn't matter. If you're not aware of that, it doesn't worth anything.
Exactly.
Awareness,
exactly.
You can't get on the bus.
Gets back to awareness. Back to awareness.
Yes, that's true.
So
at your ultimate,
not only ultimate, right now,
yes,
I am.
Right now. Yes.
Right.
Am now. This moment.
Right.
This moment is ultimate.
Right. Anyway, I love you guys. It's been fun. It's been real.
Yeah,
It has been.
All right, we got to stop. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a great session. Thank you all. I love you all.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Wow.
Buonasera.
Buonasera.
Madonna.